Have you ever noticed how exhausting life becomes when everything has to happen your way? You want people to understand you. You want your plans to unfold exactly as you imagined. You want the future to feel certain. You want the people you love to make the choices you believe are best for them. And when reality refuses to cooperate, you suffer. Not because life is cruel, but because your mind is fighting a battle it can never win. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control things that have never belonged to them. The weather, time, the past, the future, other people's opinions, other people's choices, even death itself. And every day, they wake up believing that if they could just control one more thing, they would finally find peace. But peace never arrives, because peace cannot grow where control becomes an obsession. The Stoics understood this over 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we have power over our minds, not over external events. Simple words. Yet they contain one of the greatest secrets ever discovered. Imagine carrying a heavy shield every day of your life, not to protect yourself from danger, but to fight the wind. The harder the wind blows, the harder you push. You become exhausted, frustrated, angry. Eventually, you begin to believe the wind is your enemy. But the wind was never fighting you. You were fighting the wind. That is exactly what happens every time we resist reality. The world keeps moving according to its own nature, and we keep demanding that it obey ours. Today, we'll discover why the strongest people aren't those who control everything around them. They're the ones who finally stop trying, because the day you stop fighting what you cannot control is the day you finally become free. The invisible war. You're fighting every day. There is a battle taking place inside you, not on the streets. Not in your workplace, not in your relationships. It happens quietly, every single day. Most people never realize they're fighting it. They simply call it stress, anxiety, frustration, bad luck. But beneath all those emotions lies a single invisible conflict, a conflict between reality and the version of reality your mind desperately wishes existed. Think about yesterday. How many times did something happen that you immediately wanted to change? Perhaps someone ignored your message. Perhaps traffic made you late. Perhaps a colleague misunderstood your intentions. Perhaps someone criticized you unfairly. Perhaps life simply refused to follow the script you had written in your head. At that exact moment, the battle began. Not between you and another person, not between you and the world, but between your expectations and reality itself. This is where suffering quietly begins. Most people believe pain comes from circumstances. The Stoics saw something different. They understood that circumstances are often only the spark. Our resistance is the fire. Imagine standing in the middle of the ocean. A wave rises before you. Instead of allowing it to pass, you decide to push it back. You throw all your strength against something infinitely larger than yourself. For a moment you feel determined, maybe even powerful, but the ocean never notices. The wave continues, again and again and again. Eventually your body becomes exhausted. Not because the ocean attacked you, but because you insisted on fighting something that was never trying to fight you. Life works the same way. Every day reality sends waves toward us. Some are gentle, others are painful. Some bring joy, others bring disappointment. But every single one of them asks the same question. Will you flow, or will you resist? Most people spend their lives resisting. They resist aging. They resist change. They resist rejection. They resist failure. They resist uncertainty. They resist the past. They resist the future. They resist people for being exactly who they are. And little by little, their resistance becomes their identity. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to replay the same conversation over and over inside your mind? You think of what you should have said, what they should have understood, how things should have happened differently. Hours pass, sometimes days, sometimes years. Yet reality never changes. Only your peace disappears. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than almost anyone. Despite ruling the largest empire on earth, he could not control disease. He could not stop betrayal. He could not prevent war. He could not keep the people he loved alive forever. If anyone had the power to shape reality, it was an emperor. Yet even he discovered that true power was never about controlling events. It was about governing himself. That lesson remains just as important today. Look around. People spend enormous amounts of energy trying to control the opinions of strangers, trying to predict the future, trying to avoid every possible mistake, trying to force life into a shape that feels safe. But life has never promised certainty. It has only promised change. The Stoics never asked for a world without storms. They asked for the strength to remain steady when storms arrived. Imagine an ancient Greek lighthouse standing upon a rugged cliff. For centuries, the sea has crashed against its foundation. Violent storms have struck its walls. Relentless winds have tested its strength. Yet the lighthouse remains, not because it controls the sea, but because it was built to withstand it. This is the image the Stoics wanted us to become, not people who demand calm seas, but people who become strong enough to face them. Every difficult moment presents a choice so small that most people never notice it. You can ask, why is this happening to me? Or you can ask, how will I choose to respond? Those two questions lead to completely different lives. The first gives your power away. The second quietly returns it. This is why Epictetus insisted that freedom begins the moment we understand what belongs to us, and what never did. Your thoughts belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Everything else comes and goes like the wind. The tragedy is not that life changes. The tragedy is believing it never should. Every season teaches this lesson. Winter never apologizes for arriving. Spring never asks permission to bloom. Autumn never resists letting go of its leaves. Nature flows. Only human beings stand in the middle of the river demanding that the current reverse itself, and then we wonder why we feel exhausted. Perhaps the greatest act of courage is not controlling life. Perhaps it is trusting it enough to stop fighting every moment we cannot change, because the invisible war you've been fighting was never against the world. It was against reality itself, and reality has never lost that battle. But something extraordinary happens the moment you finally lower your sword, not because you've surrendered, but because you've discovered that peace was never found in winning the fight. It was found in realizing there was never a fight to begin with. The illusion of control. There is something the human mind does almost automatically. It creates the comforting illusion that if we think hard enough, plan carefully enough, prepare thoroughly enough, we can prevent pain. We tell ourselves that control is safety, that certainty is peace, that if we could only anticipate every possible outcome, nothing could hurt us again. It sounds reasonable, even intelligent, but beneath that belief hides one of the greatest sources of anxiety known to humanity, because life has never promised certainty, and yet most people spend every waking day chasing it. Think about how often your mind travels into the future, not because the future is here, but because your imagination insists on living there. What if I fail? What if they reject me? What if I lose everything? What if something terrible happens? Notice something important. None of those events are happening now. They exist only inside your imagination, yet your body reacts as though they are already real. Your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, your breathing changes, sleep becomes difficult. Peace quietly disappears, not because reality attacked you, but because your mind created a future that does not yet exist. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. They knew that imagination can become either our greatest ally or our greatest prison. Epictetus often reminded his students that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments we make about them. That sentence changes everything. Imagine two sailors standing on the same ship. A violent storm begins. One immediately believes we're going to die. The other calmly says, we'll do everything within our power. The waves are identical. The wind is identical. The danger is identical. Only one thing is different. The story each sailor tells himself. Life works exactly the same way. Most suffering begins long before reality arrives. It begins inside the stories we create. Stories about tomorrow, stories about failure, stories about rejection, stories about what people might think, stories about everything that could go wrong. And because those stories feel real, we become prisoners of possibilities instead of participants in the present moment. Marcus Aurelius had every reason to worry. He ruled an empire surrounded by enemies. Disease spread across his lands. Political betrayal waited around every corner. Every morning could bring news of another disaster. Yet when he wrote in his private journal, he rarely focused on controlling tomorrow. Instead, he focused on preparing himself. That is one of the greatest distinctions in Stoicism. Control the preparation, release the outcome. Imagine an archer standing before a target. He carefully selects the arrow. He checks the bow. He studies the wind. He steadies his breathing. He releases the string with complete attention. Everything until that moment belongs to him. But once the arrow leaves the bow, the wind becomes stronger. A bird may suddenly cross the sky. The target may move. The outcome no longer belongs to the archer. Only the effort did. How different would your life become if you approached every challenge that way? Prepare completely. Act courageously. Then release the outcome. Instead, most people do the opposite. They prepare very little and obsess endlessly over results they cannot control. That is why anxiety grows, not because life is uncertain, but because we refuse to accept uncertainty. Think about the moments when you felt the greatest fear. Waiting for medical results, waiting for a message, waiting after a job interview, waiting for someone to call. During those moments, nothing is actually happening. Yet, internally, everything feels like it's collapsing. Why? Because the mind hates empty spaces. When it doesn't know the future, it invents one. And strangely, it almost always invents the worst possible version. This was never meant to protect us. It was simply an ancient survival mechanism. Thousands of years ago, assuming danger increased the chances of survival. Today, that same instinct often creates unnecessary suffering. The Stoics refused to become slaves to imagined disasters, not because they believed nothing bad would happen. They knew suffering would come, loss would come, illness would come, death would come. But they also knew something far more important. When those moments finally arrived, they wanted to meet them with a clear mind, not with years of unnecessary fear already draining their strength. Imagine carrying a heavy stone every day, not because you need it today, but because you might need it someday, year after year. The weight slowly bends your back, exhausts your body, steals your joy. Then one day, you realize something astonishing. The stone was never necessary. You were carrying tomorrow instead of living today. How many invisible stones have you been carrying? The fear of losing people who are still beside you, the fear of conversations that haven't happened, the fear of failures that may never exist, the fear of futures that belong only to imagination. Every one of those stones makes today's journey heavier. The Stoic path invites us to set them down, not because tomorrow doesn't matter, but because today deserves our full attention. Control your effort, control your choices, control your character. Everything else must be released. This is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is not surrender. It is trust. Trust that whatever tomorrow brings, you will meet it with the same courage you have survived every difficult day before, because your strength has never come from predicting the future. It has always come from becoming the kind of person capable of facing it. And when that realization finally settles into your heart, the future loses much of its power to frighten you. Not because uncertainty disappears, but because your confidence no longer depends on certainty. It depends on who you choose to become. Marcus Aurelius and the wisdom of acceptance. There is a reason Marcus Aurelius continues to inspire people nearly 2,000 years after his death. It wasn't because he lived an easy life. It wasn't because he ruled the greatest empire on earth. It wasn't because history remembered him as an emperor. It was because, in the middle of chaos, he learned to remain at peace. Imagine waking every morning knowing that thousands of lives depend on your decisions. An empire stretches across continents. Enemies gather beyond the borders. Political betrayal hides behind smiling faces. A deadly plague spreads through the cities. Your closest friends die. Members of your own family leave this world before you. Every sunrise brings another problem no one else can solve. Most people imagine power as freedom. Marcus Aurelius discovered the opposite. The more power he possessed, the more he realized how little he truly controlled. He could command armies, but not the weather. He could govern nations, but not disease. He could issue laws, but not people's hearts. He could protect Rome, but not time itself. And somewhere in the middle of all that uncertainty, he wrote words that still echo across centuries. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Read those words again, not because they are beautiful, but because they are revolutionary. They shift your attention away from a battle you cannot win, toward one you can. Most of us wake each morning trying to organize the world. Marcus Aurelius woke each morning trying to organize himself. That single difference changes everything. Imagine two gardeners. The first spends every day complaining about the rain. Too much rain, too little rain, too much wind, too much heat. Every season becomes another reason for frustration. The second gardener accepts the weather exactly as it arrives. Instead of fighting the sky, he learns how to cultivate the soil beneath his feet. Which one will harvest peace? Life asks us the same question every day. Will you spend your energy demanding different weather or growing stronger roots? Marcus understood something that modern life constantly encourages us to forget. Reality is not obligated to satisfy our expectations. People will misunderstand you, plans will fail, loved ones will disappoint you, unexpected problems will appear without invitation. None of these things are evidence that life is unfair. They are evidence that life is alive. The river flows, the seasons change, empires rise, empires fall, children become adults, parents grow old. Everything moves, everything transforms. Only the human mind insists that change should somehow stop when it becomes uncomfortable. That is where suffering begins, not in change itself, but in our refusal to walk beside it. Marcus Aurelius never asked, "Why is this happening?" Instead, he asked, "What does this moment require from me?" Notice how different those questions feel. The first turns you into a victim. The second transforms you into a participant. One waits for reality to improve. The other chooses to improve regardless of reality. This is the wisdom of acceptance. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People imagine it means giving up, doing nothing, becoming passive. The Stoics meant something entirely different. Acceptance is seeing reality exactly as it is, without demanding that it become something else before you allow yourself to be at peace. Imagine holding a rope tied to a massive ship leaving the harbor. You refuse to let go. The ship continues moving. The rope tightens. Soon your hands begin to bleed, your shoulders ache. Your entire body strains against a force far greater than yourself. Eventually, you have two choices. Keep holding on, or release the rope. The moment you let go, the ship continues exactly as before. The only thing that changes is your suffering. How many ropes are you still holding today? A conversation that ended years ago, a mistake you keep replaying, a betrayal you refuse to forgive, a future you desperately want to control, a version of yourself that no longer exists. Each one quietly drains your strength. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that life keeps moving, whether we hold on or not. The wise person does not waste energy resisting the movement of life. Instead, he walks with it. Think about nature. The oak tree does not fight the winter. The sea does not resist the tide. The stars do not complain about the night. Everything in nature follows its own order. Only human beings believe peace depends upon changing reality. Perhaps peace has been available all along, not after life becomes easier, but after we stop demanding that it be different. Marcus Aurelius understood this during moments that would have broken most people. He buried children. He endured endless wars. He ruled through famine and plague. Still, his writings rarely sound bitter. Instead, they sound like conversations with himself, gentle reminders, quiet corrections, daily exercises in humility. He knew that philosophy was not something to admire, it was something to practice. Every difficult morning, every unexpected loss, every painful disappointment, every ordinary day. Acceptance was not his destination, it was his discipline. And perhaps that is the invitation waiting for us today. Not to admire Marcus Aurelius from a distance, but to imitate him. The next time life refuses to follow your plans, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself one simple question. What part of this truly belongs to me? If it belongs to your character, strengthen it. If it belongs to your choices, improve them. If it belongs to someone else, release it. If it belongs to time, be patient. If it belongs to fate, accept it. Because every moment spent fighting reality is a moment stolen from living it. And perhaps the strongest people are not those who force life to obey them. Perhaps they are the ones who learn to walk beside life, without fear, without resentment, without resistance, quietly, steadily, with the kind of dignity that no circumstance can ever take away. Why resistance creates suffering? There is a truth that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is often optional. At first, those words sound impossible. How could suffering be optional? What about betrayal, loss, failure, illness? Surely those things cause suffering. The Stoics would answer differently. They would say that life delivers pain, but the mind decides whether that pain becomes a prison. Imagine holding a burning piece of charcoal in your hand. The fire hurts. That is pain. Now imagine refusing to let go. Hours pass. The charcoal continues burning your skin, not because it became hotter, but because you kept holding it. That is suffering. How many burning coals have you refused to release? A mistake from 10 years ago, a relationship that ended, words someone spoke in anger, a dream that never became reality. Every day you replay them. Every day you reopen the wound. Every day you convince yourself that if you think about it long enough, you might somehow change what has already happened. But reality never changes. Only your peace disappears. This is resistance. Resistance is not simply disliking what happened. Resistance is demanding that reality become something it no longer can. It is arguing with the past, negotiating with fate, demanding certainty from an uncertain world. And every time we do, we create another layer of suffering. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He wrote that the obstacle itself becomes the way. Think about that for a moment. Most people see obstacles as interruptions. The Stoics saw them as teachers. Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. He places cold steel into an intense fire. Then he strikes it again, and again, and again. From the outside, it looks violent, but every strike has a purpose. Without pressure, the blade never becomes strong. Life shapes character in the same way. Every disappointment, every rejection, every unexpected hardship has the potential to strengthen you, not because suffering is beautiful, but because resistance prevents growth. Consider a river flowing through a valley. When the water meets a large stone, it doesn't become angry. It doesn't stop flowing. It doesn't waste energy wishing the stone was somewhere else. It simply moves around it, patiently, effortlessly. Eventually, even the hardest rock begins to change. Not because the river fought harder, but because it never stopped flowing. Human beings often choose the opposite. We stop, we complain, we replay, we resist. We remain emotionally trapped beside the same stone for years. Some people build an entire identity around what happened to them. I was betrayed. I was abandoned. I was treated unfairly. I never got the opportunity I deserved. Little by little, their pain becomes their name. Their suffering becomes their story. And although the event happened only once, they relive it thousands of times. The Stoics invite us to ask a different question. Not, why did this happen? But, what can this teach me? That single question transforms adversity into wisdom. Imagine walking through an ancient Greek temple. One hallway is perfectly smooth. The other is filled with broken marble steps. Most people choose the easy path, but which one develops stronger legs? Which one teaches balance? Which one demands attention? Life rarely grows us through comfort. Growth usually arrives disguised as difficulty. Think about every person you admire, the calmest, the wisest, the strongest. Almost none of them were shaped by easy lives. They were shaped by hardship, loss, failure, responsibility. They became peaceful, not because life stopped testing them, but because they stopped resisting every test. Epictetus was born a slave. He understood suffering in ways few people ever will. Yet he never allowed his circumstances to decide the quality of his character. He discovered a freedom no prison could steal, the freedom to choose his response. That is where true strength begins. Not when life becomes easier, but when your response becomes wiser. Perhaps you've been waiting for life to remove every obstacle before allowing yourself to feel peace. But what if peace has never been waiting at the end of the road? What if peace has been available in the way you walk it? Imagine climbing a mountain. The wind grows stronger. The path becomes steeper. Your legs begin to ache. You could curse the mountain, or you could recognize that every difficult step is making you capable of reaching the summit. The mountain isn't against you. It's preparing you. Life often works the same way. The obstacle isn't always standing in your path. Sometimes, the obstacle is the path, and the moment you stop asking life to become easier, you begin becoming stronger. That is why resistance creates suffering. Not because reality is cruel, but because fighting reality drains the very energy you need to live it. When you finally stop resisting, you don't lose. You become available for something far greater: growth, wisdom, freedom, and an inner peace that no external circumstance can ever take away. Because the strongest soul is not the one that never suffers, it is the one that learns. To stop fighting the lessons life has chosen to teach. Amor Fati, loving what happens. There is a phrase the Stoics cherished more than almost any other. Two simple words: Amor Fati, love your fate. At first, it sounds impossible. Love disappointment, love failure, love loss, love the moments that broke your heart. Surely that cannot be what they meant. And yet, it is. Not because suffering is pleasant, not because pain should be celebrated, but because every event that has ever happened to you has helped shape the person sitting here today. Imagine reading a novel. Halfway through the story, the main character loses everything. Friends leave, dreams collapse, the future becomes uncertain. If you stopped reading at that moment, you would call it a tragedy. But the author isn't finished writing. The chapter that feels like an ending may actually be the beginning. Life often feels the same. We judge the entire story based on one painful chapter. We declare defeat long before life has finished revealing its purpose. The Stoics believed something extraordinary. They believed that every obstacle contains hidden instruction. Every delay carries unseen preparation. Every disappointment quietly redirects us towards something we cannot yet understand. Think back to one moment in your own life, a moment you desperately wished had never happened. Perhaps you lost a job. Perhaps someone walked away. Perhaps a dream collapsed before your eyes. In that moment, you believed life had betrayed you, but look where you are now. Would you truly be the same person if that event had never happened? Would your compassion be the same? Your wisdom? Your patience, your strength? Sometimes, the greatest gifts arrive wearing the disguise of loss. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself not merely to endure what happens, but to welcome it. That idea changes everything. Imagine standing beneath the rain. One person curses every drop, complains, resists, waits for the storm to end before allowing themselves to smile. Another person lifts their face toward the sky, not because they enjoy getting wet, but because they understand that the rain feeds the forests, the rivers, the fields. Without storms, nothing grows. Your hardships are no different. The challenges you try hardest to escape may be the very experiences preparing you for the life you're meant to live. Nature understands this perfectly. The seed must disappear beneath the earth before it becomes a tree. The butterfly must struggle inside the cocoon before it learns to fly. Gold must enter the furnace before it shines. Why should human character be any different? And yet, when hardship arrives, we immediately ask, why me? Perhaps the better question is, what is this preparing me for? Imagine an ancient sculptor standing before a massive block of marble. To everyone else, it looks like an ordinary stone, worthless, heavy, unremarkable. But the sculptor sees something hidden inside. With every strike of the chisel, pieces fall away. The marble cracks, dust fills the air. From the outside, it almost looks destructive. But the sculptor is not destroying, he is revealing. Life often feels like that sculptor. Every disappointment removes something unnecessary. Every failure chips away another illusion. Every hardship reveals a little more of who you truly are, not despite the pain, but because of it. Amor Fati asks for something incredibly difficult. Do not merely tolerate your life. Do not merely survive it. Learn to embrace it, every success, every setback, every victory, every wound, because each one belongs to your journey. Think about the strongest people you've ever met, not the loudest, not the richest, not the most famous, the strongest. They rarely speak with bitterness. Instead, they often say something surprising. I'm grateful it happened. Not because the experience was easy, but because it transformed them. That is Amor Fati. It is the quiet confidence that nothing life places before you is meaningless. Every challenge carries the possibility of becoming wisdom. Every scar can become evidence of growth. Every ending can become the doorway to another beginning. Imagine standing before a massive ancient Greek staircase leading high into the clouds. You cannot see the top, only the next step. If you refuse to climb because the journey is difficult, you remain exactly where you are. But if you accept every step, even the painful ones, eventually you discover something beautiful. The staircase was never your enemy. It was your teacher. Life is asking the same of you. Not to love pain, but to love the person pain is helping you become. Because one day, you may look back on this very season of your life, the season you wanted to escape, and quietly whisper, I'm grateful it happened. That is the beginning of true freedom. That is the heart of Amor Fati. Your mind is the only kingdom you truly own. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are standing at the highest point of an ancient Greek fortress. Below you stretches an empire, cities, mountains, rivers, endless roads disappearing into the horizon. From this height, everything appears within your reach. Yet there is one truth every king eventually discovers. You can rule nations without ever ruling yourself. History is filled with powerful men who conquered continents, but were defeated by anger, destroyed by greed, consumed by fear, enslaved by pride. Their enemies never truly defeated them. Their own minds did. The Stoics understood something extraordinary. The greatest kingdom you will ever govern exists entirely within you. Not your career, not your reputation, not your bank account, not the opinions people have about your life, your mind. That is your kingdom, and every morning, you decide who will rule it. Most people wake up and immediately hand over the keys. One rude comment, and their peace disappears. One unexpected problem, and anxiety becomes king. One criticism, and self-doubt takes the throne. One disappointment, and fear governs the day. Without realizing it, they allow strangers to become rulers of their inner world. Imagine building the most magnificent marble temple in all of ancient Greece. Gigantic white columns, golden statues, polished marble floors reflecting the morning light. Now imagine leaving every door unlocked. Anyone can walk inside. Anyone can rearrange the furniture. Anyone can break the statues. Anyone can light fires inside your sanctuary. Would you call yourself its guardian? Of course not. Yet that is exactly how many people treat their minds. Every opinion enters. Every insult is welcomed. Every fear is allowed to stay. Every distraction receives a throne, until eventually, the temple no longer feels peaceful. It becomes crowded, chaotic, noisy. The Stoics invite us to become guardians once again, not by building walls against the world, but by becoming intentional about what we allow inside. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every day, before trying to govern Rome. He governed his thoughts. He reminded himself that people would be selfish, some would lie, some would betray, others would misunderstand him completely. Knowing this, he wasn't surprised when it happened. Preparation protected his peace. Most disappointment comes from expecting people to behave differently than human beings have always behaved. We expect perfection. From imperfect people, we expect certainty. From an uncertain world, we expect fairness. From a life that has never promised equality. Then, reality arrives, and we feel betrayed. But perhaps, reality didn't betray us. Perhaps our expectations did. Imagine an old castle standing on the edge of a cliff. Storms come every year. Rain pounds against its walls. Lightning strikes nearby. The wind screams through the valleys. Yet the castle remains. Why? Because it was built upon solid stone, not soft sand. Your values are that stone. Discipline, patience, integrity, courage, humility. These are foundations no storm can wash away. But if your identity is built upon praise, success, approval, comfort, then every strong wind feels like a disaster, because your foundation was never stable. Epictetus once asked his students a simple question: if someone insults your body, have they touched your character? The answer is no. Character exists beyond insult, beyond praise, beyond reputation. It belongs entirely to you. That realization changes everything. Imagine carrying a priceless jewel through a crowded marketplace. Would you hand it to every stranger who asked to examine it? Of course not. Then why hand your emotional peace to anyone willing to criticize you? Your peace is more valuable than gold, more valuable than success, more valuable than status. Because without peace, nothing else can truly be enjoyed. This is why the Stoics returned again and again to self-mastery, not because they wanted to control others, but because they understood the only victory that truly lasts is victory over yourself. Every day offers another opportunity, another chance to decide who rules your kingdom: fear or courage, impulse or wisdom, resentment or acceptance. Every choice becomes another stone laid into the foundation of your inner temple. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, you become someone different. Not because the world changed, but because your government changed. Imagine returning to that magnificent marble temple. This time, the doors remain open, not because anyone may rule it, but because nothing entering can destroy it. Visitors come, visitors leave, storms pass through, seasons change, yet the sanctuary remains untouched, calm, silent, steady. That is the mind the Stoics hope to build, not a mind isolated from life, but a mind so deeply rooted in wisdom that life could no longer shake it, because the greatest kingdom you will ever possess will never appear on a map. It lives quietly behind your eyes, within your thoughts, within your choices, within your character. Guard it well, for once you learn to rule your own mind, you no longer need to rule anything else. Peace begins where control ends. There comes a moment in every person's life, a moment so quiet, so ordinary, that most people fail to recognize it. It is the moment when they finally understand. They were never carrying the world, only the illusion that they had to. For years, perhaps decades, you have carried responsibilities that were never yours. The emotions of other people, their expectations, their approval, their disappointments, their choices. You convinced yourself that if only you loved them enough, worked harder, explained yourself better, sacrificed more, then everything would finally fall into place. But it never did. Because peace has never been born from controlling people. Peace has always been born from releasing them. Imagine standing at the edge of a great cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea. In your hands, you hold dozens of ropes. Each rope stretches towards someone in your life. One is tied to your parents, another to your children, another to your partner, another to your career, another to your past, another to your future. Every rope pulls in a different direction. You spend your entire life trying to keep every rope tight, trying to make everyone happy, trying to make everything work, trying to hold together a world that grows heavier every single year. Then, one day, your hands begin to bleed, your shoulders collapse beneath the weight, your spirit grows tired, not because you are weak, but because you were never meant to carry so much. The Stoics ask one simple question. What if you let go? Not because you stopped caring, but because love and control are not the same thing. Many people confuse the two. They believe loving someone means protecting them from every mistake, fixing every problem, carrying every burden, controlling every outcome. But love cannot breathe where control exists. Love requires freedom, just as peace requires acceptance. Marcus Aurelius understood that every human being follows their own path. Some will choose wisdom, others will choose pride, some will forgive, others will cling to resentment, some will grow, others will remain exactly as they are. None of these choices belong to you. Your responsibility has never been to live another person's life, only your own. Imagine a gardener planting an olive tree. He prepares the soil, waters the roots, protects the young branches, but he never stands beside the tree demanding that it grow faster. He understands that growth has its own rhythm, its own seasons, its own timing. Human beings are no different. You cannot force another person to heal. You cannot force someone to understand you. You cannot force respect. You cannot force loyalty. You cannot force love. The more tightly you hold, the more exhausted you become. And strangely, the very thing you hope to preserve often slips away. Epictetus once said that freedom is found when we desire events to happen exactly as they happen. Not because every event is pleasant, but because reality no longer becomes our enemy. Think about how much energy you spend arguing with yesterday, replaying conversations, imagining different endings, wishing people had behaved differently, as though your thoughts could somehow rewrite history. The past never hears your arguments. It remains exactly where it has always been. Only your present continues to suffer. Imagine carrying an enormous marble statue upon your shoulders. At first, you barely notice its weight. Years pass. The burden becomes familiar. You convince yourself that carrying it is simply part of who you are. Then someone quietly asks, "Why don't you put it down?" You look confused, because you forgot. It was always a choice. Many of the emotional burdens you carry today are exactly like that statue. Not every burden. Some pain is real, some grief deserves to be felt, some tears should never be rushed. The Stoics never asked us to become emotionless. They asked us to stop multiplying pain through resistance. Grieve, but do not become grief. Feel sadness, but do not build your home inside it. Experience disappointment, but do not allow disappointment to define your identity. Everything passes. The sea calms, storms move on, winter gives way to spring. Even the longest night eventually welcomes the morning. Why should your suffering be the only thing that lasts forever? It doesn't have to. Imagine once more the great marble staircase rising into the clouds. Every step represents something you finally release. The need to be understood. One step, the need to control every outcome. Another step, the fear of uncertainty. Another, the weight of yesterday. Another. Little by little, you notice something remarkable. The higher you climb, the lighter you become. Not because life became easier, because you finally stopped carrying what was never yours, and somewhere near the summit, standing beneath the golden light of dawn, you realize something that changes everything. Peace was never waiting at the end of perfect circumstances. Peace was waiting at the end of your resistance, because peace begins exactly where control ends. Become unshakable. There is a mountain in every human soul. Most people never find it. They spend their lives wandering through valleys of fear, forests of doubt, storms of anxiety, always searching for solid ground. But the mountain has been there all along, waiting, silent, unmoved. The Stoics believed that becoming unshakable was never about controlling life. It was about becoming like that mountain, steady, calm, rooted, no matter what the weather decided to do. Imagine standing before an ancient Greek temple at the top of the highest peak in the world. The sky is dark. Thunder rolls across the horizon. Violent winds sweep through the marble columns. Rain crashes against the stone. Lightning tears across the heavens. Yet the temple never trembles, not because the storm is weak, but because its foundation reaches deeper than the storm can touch. Ask yourself, where is your foundation? Is it built upon praise? Then criticism will destroy you. Is it built upon success? Failure will terrify you. Is it built upon wealth? Loss will consume you. Is it built upon other people's approval? Their rejection will become your prison. But if your foundation is built upon character, nothing outside of you can truly take it away. Marcus Aurelius lost people he loved. He watched disease spread across the empire. He endured betrayal, war, uncertainty. Every reason to become bitter, every reason to surrender. Yet, when he wrote to himself, he never spoke like a defeated man. He reminded himself of something extraordinary. The universe is change. Life is opinion. How much of your suffering today is created not by life, but by the opinions you've attached to it? The event happens. Then the mind begins speaking. This shouldn't have happened. This always happens to me. My life is ruined. I'll never recover. Those thoughts become chains, not because they are true, but because they are repeated again and again and again. Imagine looking into a perfectly still lake. When the water is calm, you see everything clearly, the mountains, the sky, the stars. Now imagine throwing stones into the water every few seconds. The reflection disappears. Nothing changed in the sky, nothing changed in the mountains. Only the surface became disturbed. Your mind works exactly the same way. Life throws the first stone. After that, most people spend years throwing the rest themselves. Every memory, every fear, every regret, every imagined future, until they can no longer see reality clearly. The Stoic path is the practice of allowing the water to become still again, not by escaping life, but by refusing to disturb it further. Epictetus reminded us that no person has the power to harm our character without our permission. Think about that. Someone may insult you, ignore you, reject you, lie about you, even betray you, but none of those things can force you to become dishonest, cruel, cowardly, or resentful. Those choices remain yours. That is freedom, real freedom, the kind no emperor can give, the kind no enemy can steal. Imagine an old olive tree growing alone upon a rocky cliff overlooking the sea. For hundreds of years, storms have bent its branches, summer has scorched its leaves, winter has frozen its roots. Still, every spring, it grows again. Not because life became easier, because life taught it how to endure. Perhaps you have spent years asking God, or fate, or the universe, to remove every storm from your life. Perhaps the answer has never been the removal of the storm. Perhaps the answer has always been your transformation within it. The strongest people are not those who never cry. They cry. But they continue walking. They are not people who never feel fear. They feel it. But fear no longer decides their direction. They are not untouched by pain. They simply refuse to become servants of it. That is emotional mastery, not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to surrender your character because of emotion. One day, you will face another disappointment. Someone will misunderstand you. A plan will fail. A door will close. Life will once again refuse to follow your expectations. When that day arrives, remember this moment. Remember the mountain. Remember the lighthouse. Remember the river. Remember the temple standing unmoved beneath the storm. Most of all, remember yourself, not the fearful version, not the anxious version, but the person you are becoming, Because every difficult day gives you another opportunity, not to prove your strength to the world, but to prove it to yourself. And one morning, without even noticing when it happened, you will wake up. The same problems may still exist, the same uncertain future may still be waiting, the same imperfect world may still surround you. But something inside you will be different. The noise will no longer control you. The opinions of others will no longer define you. Fear will no longer sit upon your throne. You will walk more slowly, speak more intentionally, react less, observe more, trust life more deeply, and for the first time, you will understand what the Stoics spent their lives trying to teach. Peace was never something you needed to find. It was something you needed to stop abandoning, because the strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. The strongest soul is the one that remains steady when everything else is shaking. That is the day you become unshakable, not because life stopped testing you, but because you finally stopped fearing the test. And in that quiet moment, without applause, without recognition, without anyone else even noticing, you become truly free.